Question of the day, what is your favorite game based on a comic book IP? So some, that might be for me, it's HeroClix, right? Or it might be Marvel United or X-Men United. But today we're talking about an independent comic. This is, at the time, I believe it's Dark Horse. This is Mike Mignola's Hellboy and the BPRD. This is a top-down dungeon crawly sort of game. We need a better version of, or genre than just dungeon crawl, because it's not in the past. It's a fighting game like Imperial Assault, the campaign style. It's a campaign-based top-down exploration game, mystery game, whatever you want to call it, adventure game. That's what we're talking about today. So let's take a look at how Hellboy plays, what it looks like, what it does. We'll come back up, talk final thoughts right now. Alright, so this is Hellboy set up for 2 players on the very first scenario. This is the eviction notice case file. A couple of important things. Keep the case files spoiler free as long as you can, because yes, you can replay this game. It's not a campaign in the sense, or a legacy game, but it's a campaign in the sense that playing it through the first time, part of the charm of it is not knowing what's going to happen next. So we're going to start here with the basement. If you don't even want to know that, if you don't want to know anything that comes up, I've even kept this face down from the tutorial, but we're going to do the one out of the tutorial, but you don't have to play it as a tutorial. It is a short mission. They're based down here, the length of them and the difficulty. It will tell you on these case files, so you'll read this first part, this is flavor text, then you'll read some of the setup stuff. It'll tell you how to make the deck of doom, which is a deck that basically is going to give you bad things that happen. You'll flip these over and it says, rumbling underfoot. Put this card into play. During the next agent phase, agents can only move up to 1 area as part of their move action, even if they have a rule that would normally let them move further. At the end of the agent phase, shuffle this card back into the deck of doom. So those are going to be set up here. It also, depending on your agent count, will tell you which cards to use for the encounters. Now the encounters will be down here. You'll then lay out the tiles as such. So you get the 4, the 2, 2, 1. It doesn't really matter what they are as far as this goes. Some of the expansions have some outside tiles and some fire tiles, but these are pretty straightforward. So we flip that one over. This one discards, it says. Then we're going to read this one. We do all this stuff here, put our agents, or put our markers out there on this board. So we have another board here that tracks the impending doom, the information gathered, etc. So it tells us to put an impending doom on 7, and then you would put a marker on this same card showing that that impending doom matches this card, because one of the fail conditions when the confrontation happens is if you reach this impending doom track. So if you do that, you would flip this over and read it. The other way the confrontation can occur, and that's basically the boss fight, which you will always do no matter what, even if you get knocked out. You can do an advantageous version, which is what this next card is going to show us right here. An advantageous version of the encounter. You can all get knocked out, or you can reach the doom track. Either way, you're going to fight the boss. So this is telling you that. This also, the back tells you to do some stuff. You know, don't flip this one over if it tells you not to. This one says move this card into the play area. If the agents take time, flip this card immediately after advancing the impending doom track. So these two are going to be up here, which means that this case file is sitting here. Read it. So it's going to tell us to put our minions out there. So we've got A, B, C, D. Those will correspond to the minions in the game. Here's our advantageous condition right here. If all rooms have been explored and there's no minions in the board, in the end phase, flip this card, begin the first round. We are playing with Hellboy and Abe Sapien right now. Now they start with 3 action cubes, or they get 3 action cubes, as well as 2 items each. So we've got his pistol, and then we've got this item card, or this action special card called Deep Pockets. And it allows you to draw for ammo and stuff. Now, there's a requisitions deck, which is cards that give you all sorts of good bonuses and benefits, as well as being that it's a campaign, you can also do some things mid-game between campaigns, between scenarios, to get certain benefits, and I don't want to spoil those either. But the way you do this is you have certain actions that you can do. Also, the rule book's fantastic. It looks like Mike Mignola, like a comic book. So the different actions you can do are listed right here on the back of the book, and it's really well done. This is a great rule book. So first of all, you can move, which means you can move up to 2 areas. Now, an area is a space on a tile. Now, essentially, 1 tiles have 1 area, 2 or 2, 4 is 4. So if we move 1, we would do this. Now, plus, don't forget, Plus, you also have certain abilities that each character has, as well as some special rules that they may break. Here are our skills when you're doing melee, when you're doing ranged, when you're exploring, and your defense are here. These colors tell you the type of dice you're going to roll. And each dice, obviously, it goes better red, then the orange, then yellow, and then black is the upgraded dice. You can only get that by upgrading. You can upgrade by spending a second action cube to do an action. So let's just say now you can explore for free if no enemies are there. So exploring means you can basically look into the next room and see what's there. So we have an encounter card here. It says minion A, minion B. We check up there. Our minion A is the rampaging frog. So we put it in here, right there. And if it's a 2 tile, you do the first 2 things on the first tile, the second 2 things on the second tile. It's a 4 tile, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Single, they all go in there. So nothing else on 2. So that means that a clue goes here. So a clue token's here. Clues are insights gained. Each scenario, each case file will tell you what to do with that. It might give you benefits against the boss. It might do other things, but currently we don't know what it does. We just know that it's probably a good thing. And then B is a venomous. So we need our venomous frog monster. Now, first of all, the miniatures are absolutely fantastic in this game. Check out Hellboy. I want to show you this really close. The detail is amazing on these miniatures. It looks straight out of the comics. So really, really good stuff. So now we have our tiles set up. The next thing we can do is we can move. So we could spend a cube to move. You can move up to 2 areas, so 1, 2. Or you can make a ranged attack. So Abe Sapien has a red for his ranged attack, which means you always roll 3 dice. We would grab the 3 red dice, and we would roll to see how many hits we got. Now, if we upgraded, we would be able to change this to a black dice. But you also always roll this blue dice here because it gives you an effect. So essentially, we're going to roll. This is a reroll. Now we currently have 2, 3, and the way you fight is we're shooting at this rampaging monster. There are certain lines of sight rules that are essentially you draw a straight line from the square in the middle to the other square, and if it crosses a door, that's fine, but if it crosses anything else, it's obstructed or it's completely blocked. So here, his health is 6, but he's got a resilience of 2, which means he's going to soak 2 damage. So essentially, here's the deal. We're going to roll our 3 dice. We're going to re-roll now. Now we have the BPRD symbol, which means that we can make it a wild. So as a wild, we're going to choose to make a +2 hits. So this is 2, 4, 6, 7. He's got a health of 6, but he soaks 2, which means he takes 5 damage. Boom, 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 boom. So that's how you do close combat and range combat. Range obviously will tell you the range. You can be a space away. These you can be in the same space for melee, but a couple of other rules apply. You will get a downgrade of a dice if there are certain enemies or enemies in the same space you're shooting at. If there are enemies in there when you're doing melee, you lose a dice. It's a couple little rules like that that you're going to need to know when you're playing, that because you're playing against the game, you got to kind of be aware of that, of do you downgrade or do you upgrade at any point. You're going to keep doing this until you fight these. One of those things will flip, and when the condition flips, let's go ahead and see what happens. I won't spoil it, but essentially you're going to flip over this, and it becomes the boss board. I'm not going to show you the first boss, but essentially you'll put your insight tokens here that you collected, and they will do things based on this scenario. In our case, we're going to be putting the boss out, and instead of being I'll show you how the enemies act in a moment, but instead of doing regular boss behavior, instead of doing minion behavior, you're going to do boss behavior. So the bosses, they act in a certain way. First of all, really quick, when minions attack or minions activate, you're going to activate them in an order, but also based on their type. So he's a brawler, you're going to move towards the closest person in the threat order, which essentially will be a track that's on the board. You'll then do an attack if you're in the same space, if you land in the same space with 2. If you're already in the same space, he'll attack. Basically, they'll roll their melee attack, or their melee attack's 5, you'll roll against your defense, and you'll take the difference. That's how minion attacks work. The difference is with bosses, they are going to have a boss behavior deck. You're going to shuffle this up, draw a card, for instance. Burrow, if the boss is on the board when this card is drawn, remove the boss from the board. If there's not a destruction counter in the area, it was in place 1. Put this card in play. While the card is in play, the next time the boss would make an attack, it is placed in the lead agent's area before attacking. So essentially it's diving under the ground. So a whole lot of boss behavior here. So that is how you play Hellboy. Now, there are the other 2 expansions, the Wild Hunt, which adds some extra scenarios, as well as some fantastic, you get the Enraged Hellboy, as well as Hellboy Mexico, which gives you Lucha Hellboy, as well as some other things. So lots of scenarios. Plus, if you get the BPRD Archives expansion, you can build your own scenarios through some random card placement. But this is Hellboy. That's how you play it. That's what it is. So that is Hellboy. It is a great looking game. First and foremost, the game is amazing looking. Like, the miniatures are tremendous. The cards are fantastic. They just look so good. Mignola's art is really amazing. And seeing that they did that, they went this direction instead of being like, oh, we're going to do a version of it. Having his art in the game is really amazing. It sells it, because one of my favorite Batman comics was written and illustrated by Mignola as well, as the Doom comes to, no, what's it called? Anyway, it's the Lovecraftian version that happens in Gotham. It's fantastic. So I love his art. I love the way it translates in the game. I love the way the miniatures in this game look. These are tremendous looking miniatures. If you are a fan, you're going to appreciate just the nuance on the characters, like the little bitty things that are there that really matter. And so that is fantastic. So the game looks just tremendous. It translates that art and art style into how it plays. The symbology is very good. The game just looks amazing. I love the way this game looks. The dice symbols, like how they correspond with the fight, your skill symbols, the skill checks, all of it. I love how this game works. Now, as far as content, yes, the good thing is you can replay these. They're not like, I believe I mentioned that earlier, they're not things that you can't replay. However, the surprise, you do lose a little bit each time you play. But there's that expansion that allows you to randomize it. So that's cool too. So seeing how the game looks and how the game plays, it's really worth getting. But it's also worth getting these expansions, if not just for the extra characters and the extra missions, like the extra case files. That alone to me is so worth it, because yes, you can play it over and over, but being able to play more new ones is what really makes this shine. So the game looks amazing. It's a really good combat system, fighting system. It doesn't get you bogged down to where you feel like, oh, God, I can't do anything on my turn. You really feel it. I love the cube system of spending action cubes. Now, yes, it's technically just you get 3 actions per turn. I get it. But some of those might be you can spend 2 actions to upgrade your dice. To me, that kind of stuff is great. It reminds me a little bit of almost the Batman, the Arkham City Chronicles game, Gotham City Chronicles game, in the cubes and how you allocate them. But the fact you get 3 and you can do those things with them, I love it. I think this is a tremendously well thought out game. So Hellboy, if you're a fan of the universe, you have to get this game. It's a no-brainer. If you're not a fan of the Hellboy universe, this isn't going to sell you just because it's a solid game on that whole thing. Like, this game might not be enough, or the theme might not be enough to get you into this game. Even though it's a really good game, if you have to like the theme in order to like this. You can't really be indifferent or dislike it. So that is the only knock against it, is that the IP is really important, but that is its strength, but also kind of its weakness if you're not interested. So I'm Brian Drake here on the Dice Tower. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, etc. at Dice Tower Brian. Until next time, we'll see you.